I knew something was wrong before the coach even reached the gates, and I was only a kitchen girl who scrubbed pots and carried coal, so no one thought to ask me. I had lived at Thornfield Hollow my whole life, and I knew the house the way you know your own hands in the dark. So when the master ordered the south rooms aired and the good plate brought up and the long-locked gun room swept and lit, and then told all of us to smile, smile, smile until our faces ached, I knew. A house does not learn to smile in 3 days unless it is hiding something. My name is Hesper, and I was 16 that autumn. I tell this now because I am old and the men who could have punished me for telling it are long gone, and because the world remembers the great houses and the great names but forgets the girls who carried the trays. We see everything. We are not supposed to, but we do. The guest who was coming was the young Lord Aldous, nephew to the king and second in the line of the House of Renmore, and he was traveling the far counties to learn the realm he might one day be asked to serve. Thornfield Hollow was a remote place, 3 days from the capital by hard road, hemmed in by black pine woods and a river that ran fast and cold under a single old bridge. It was the last great house before the Moors, and the master, Sir Garrick Holloway, had begged the honor of hosting the young lord for 5 nights. A great honor, everyone said. The whole county said it. I heard the master say it too, in the gun room with the door shut, in a voice that did not sound honored at all. It sounded like a man counting coins he did not have. The coach came up the avenue at dusk under a sky the color of a bruise. I was meant to be at the scullery, but I had been sent to the side door with a warming pan, and so I saw the young lord step down, a slight, pale young man with tired eyes and a kind, uncertain mouth, the sort of face that has never once had to be afraid. And behind him, last out of the coach, unfolding himself slowly from the cramped dark of it, came the guard. I had never seen one of the king's own guard before. He was tall, and he wore the dark traveling cloak over the red, but I could see the red at his collar and the brass, and the way he stood, not stiff exactly, but settled, the way the old oak by the river is settled, as if the wind had been trying to move it for 200 years and had given up. His name, I learned, was Sergeant Edmund Vane. He had a quiet, weathered face and eyes that did not hurry. When he stepped down, he did not look at the great lit house with its smiling people lined up on the steps. He looked at the dark all around it. He looked at the pine woods and the river bridge and the high blind windows of the old west wing that no one used. He looked at the way out. I remember thinking, he is the only one here who is not pretending. The master came down the steps with both hands out and his face split wide. My lord, you honor us. You honor this poor house beyond words, and he went on like that too long, the way a man does when the words are covering something. Lady Holloway stood behind him in her best gray silk, her smile fixed and her eyes flat as river stones. The steward, Mr. Cobb, stood at the end of the line with the household account book pressed to his chest like a shield, and his knuckles on it were white. I was only a girl with a warming pan. But I had carried trays into that gun room 3 nights running, and I had heard things, and I knew that the smiles on those steps were the most frightened thing I had ever seen. The guard saw it too. I am sure of it now. He stood at the young lord's shoulder, cloak still on, and he looked down that line of smiling people one face at a time slowly, the way you read a page, and when he came to the steward with the book held like a shield, he stopped, just for a breath, and then he moved on easy, giving nothing away. But I had seen him stop, and the steward had seen him stop. Mr. Cobb's smile did not change, but the book pressed a little tighter to his chest. That was the first night. They put the young lord in the great south bedroom, the warmest in the house, with a fire laid high and the windows giving onto the carriage sweep below. And they put the guard in the small dressing room beside it, a narrow cell of a room with a cot, meant for a valet. The master had wanted him housed down the corridor, in the good guest room past the stair, for his comfort, of course, the comfort of the king's man. I heard him press it twice at supper. But the guard said, in a voice so level it ended the matter without seeming to argue at all, I sleep where I can hear his door. Thank you, Sir Garrick, but that is the whole of my comfort." The master's smile flickered, only for an instant. I was clearing the soup and I saw it go out and come back, like a candle in a draught. He did not want the guard beside that door. I tucked that away with the rest. I was set to carry up the morning trays, because the upper girls were run off their feet, and a princeling brings 10 times the work and none of the thanks. So I saw the young lord by daylight, in his dressing gown by the south window, kind and a little homesick and pleased by everything. And I saw the guard already up, already dressed in the full red now, standing by the window with his back to the warm and his eyes on the carriage sweep below. "Good morning," the young lord said to me, which lords do not do, and I nearly dropped the tray. The guard said nothing to me at all. But when I set the tray down, he glanced at it, only a glance, and then he said, not to me exactly, but quietly into the room, "Who tasted it?" The young lord laughed. "Sergeant, we are guests not at war." "Who tasted it?" the guard said again, the same level voice, no harder, no softer. I did not understand, and then I did, and my face went hot. "The cook, sir. Cook tastes the broth. And I carried it up myself, sir, from the kitchen. I never set it down, not once. I stopped because I was babbling." The guard looked at me then, really looked for the first time, and his eyes were not unkind. "You carried it the whole way?" "Yes, sir." "Past anyone? Did you set it down? Did anyone reach across it?" I thought back carefully, the way he seemed to want me to. "No, sir, up the back stair. No one." And then, because his eyes made me honest, Mr. Cobb was on the back stair, the steward. He stood aside to let me pass, but he didn't touch it. He only watched it go by. Something moved behind the guard's face. Not alarm. He did not have alarm, that man. He had something slower and deeper than alarm. He nodded once. "Thank you. You did well to come straight up." And then to the young lord, gently, "Eat the bread, my lord, not the rest. There's an apple in my pack from the road, have that. Will be more easy tomorrow." The young lord rolled his eyes, fond, the way you do at an old uncle who fusses. But he ate the bread and the apple. And I went back down the stairs with the rest of the breakfast untouched on the tray, and I did not know why my hands were shaking. In the kitchen, cook took one look at the full plates coming back and went pale. Did he not like it? Did he say anything? What did he say? "He said he wasn't hungry," I lied, because something in me had decided already without my leave whose side I was on. That morning the master took the young lord out to see the grounds, and the steward Mr. Cobb went with them, and so did the guard, always a half step behind the young lord's shoulder, his eyes on everything. I had to fetch dry stockings to the gun room, and the gun room door was ajar, and Lady Holloway was inside with the master's brother, Mr. Reginald, who had come the week before from the city with a black bag and a quiet smile, and no good reason anyone could name. I should have knocked. I did not knock. I stood in the dark of the corridor with the stockings in my arms, and I listened, because the house had taught me to listen, and because the smiling had frightened me, and because of the guard saying "Who tasted it" in that level, dreadful voice. "Too careful," Lady Holloway was saying. "The soldier, he has the boy on bread and apples. He won't let the broth near him." "Then not the broth," Mr. Reginald said. He had a smooth, unhurried voice, worse than shouting. "The broth was always the clumsy way. We agreed it was the clumsy way. Garrick wants it clumsy. Garrick wants it to look like an illness, a chill caught in a damp old house, God's own doing and no one's fault." "Garrick," said Mr. Reginald, "is a frightened man who has gambled this house down to the floorboards and now wants to be saved without dirtying his hands. We do not have the luxury of clean hands. The note falls due in 9 days. Either the boy goes home to the capital full of praise for our hospitality, and we are ruined and turned out onto the road by spring, or the boy does not go home at all, and a grieving king remembers forever the loyal house where his nephew breathed his last, and we are saved. There is no third door, Margaret. There is the river. There is the bridge. There is the hunt on the 4th day." I stopped breathing. I truly stopped, standing in that dark corridor with the dry stockings against my chest, because I understood every word, and every word was a stone dropping into a well with no bottom. They meant to kill him, the kind, homesick young lord who had said good morning to a kitchen girl. They meant to do it on the hunt, on the fourth day, at the river, at the bridge, and call it an accident and weep over him and be saved. And the guard, Lady Holloway said, her voice had gone very thin. There is always the guard. The guard, Mr. Reginald said, cannot be everywhere. A horse can shy. A girth can be cut 3/4 through and look whole. A bridge rail can give. The guard will be on his own horse behind, and by the time he reaches the water it will be done. One soldier, Margaret, one tired country soldier far from his palace. He is the easiest part. I did not hear the rest. I put the stockings down on the corridor floor where I stood. I could not have carried them another step, and I went away as quietly as I have ever done anything in my life, down the back stair, into the cold larder, where I stood among the hanging game and the crocks of fat and shook all over like a struck bell. One tired country soldier, far from his palace, the easiest part. They did not know him. I had watched him for one day, and I knew, in the way you simply know things at 16, that there was nothing easy about Sergeant Edmund Vane. But knowing it did not help me. I was a kitchen girl. If I ran to the young lord and cried murder, who would they believe? A king's nephew's word against a scullery maid's. They would call me mad or a thief covering a theft, and they would lock me in the coal cellar and do the thing anyway. And if I went to the guard? I thought about that all through the long afternoon, peeling and scrubbing with my hands gone clever and my mind gone far away. The guard frightened me too, in a different way, the way deep water frightens you. But the broth. He had known about the broth before I had said a word. He had stopped at the steward's white knuckles on the first night. He was already reading the house. He only lacked the one thing I had, and he did not. The words I had heard through the gun-room door. The river, the bridge, the hunt on the fourth day, the girth cut 3/4 through. It was 3 days until the hunt. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the cold attic I shared with 2 other girls and listened to the old house tick and settle, and I made up my mind. I would find a way to tell him. Not in the open, the house had eyes, and Mr. Cobb the steward was always at the turn of a stair, always with that account book held like armor, watching the trays go up and down. I would have to be cleverer than I had ever needed to be. My chance came the next morning with the trays. I carried the breakfast up the back stair, and Mr. Cobb was there again at the turning, and again he stood aside and watched the tray go by with his flat, patient eyes, and this time I understood why. He was not guarding the stair. He was watching to see whether the boy ate. He was a man waiting to see if the clumsy way had worked and being disappointed, day by day, and growing afraid. I went into the south room. The young lord was at his prayers by the window, head bowed, and the guard stood by the cold hearth in his red, and when I came in his eyes went to me and then to the door behind me, checking it, the way he checked everything. I set the tray down. My heart was going so hard I thought he must hear it. And then I did the only clever thing I had thought of in a whole sleepless night. I took the little folded paper from inside my apron. I had begged a stub of pencil from the bootboy and written on it in the dark, in my poor crooked letters, all through the watches of the night, and I set it on the tray beside the bread, under the edge of the plate, where only a man with quick eyes would see it. And I said in my ordinary kitchen girl voice, loud enough for the corridor, "Will there be anything else, sir?" The guard looked at the tray. He looked at the corner of paper under the plate, and his face did not change at all, not a flicker, not a breath, and I understood in that moment exactly how a man like him stays alive in a house like this. He said, "No, thank you. You may go," in the flattest, dullest voice in the world, the voice of a man who has not noticed anything in his life. But as I turned, I saw his hand move to the tray, easy and idle, the way a man's hand drifts to a piece of bread, and the corner of paper was gone. I went down the back stair past Mr. Cobb with my empty face on, and I do not know how my legs carried me. What I had written in my crooked dark letters was this: they mean to kill him on the hunt. The 4th day, the river bridge, the girth cut. It is the master and his brother and the lady. The steward knows. I heard them in the gun room. I am the kitchen girl. I am not mad. For the rest of that day, I waited to be dragged to the coal cellar. I waited for the guard to have shown the master my note, for a man like that surely served the great houses and would side with them against a scullery girl. I jumped at every step on the stair, but no one came for me. The afternoon wore on, gray and ordinary, and the only thing that changed in the whole house was that the guard came down to the kitchen. He had never done that. The king's man did not come to kitchens, but that afternoon he came down the back stair in his shirt sleeves with the young lord's riding boots in one hand, and he said to cook, mild as milk, "His lordship's heel has worn through. Is there a man here who works leather?" I'd not trust the trade to strangers. And cook, all flutter, sent for the saddler from the stable yard, and the saddler came, and the guard stood in the corner of the warm kitchen and watched the boots being mended and talked of nothing. The roads, the weather, the price of oats, and his eyes went over every face in that kitchen, slow and easy, the way they had gone over the line on the steps. He never once looked at me, not directly, but when cook turned to scold the spitboy, the guard's eyes crossed mine for half a heartbeat, and he gave me not a nod, nothing so large as a nod, he gave me a single slow blink like a cat by the fire. And I understood. I had been heard. I was not mad, and I was not to do one single thing more. He stayed in that kitchen the better part of an hour, mending a boot that did not need an hour's mending, and by the time he climbed the stair again I had watched him learn the whole shape of the house's lower world, which doors led where, who answered to whom, where the saddles were kept, where the stable lads slept, which way a man would carry a girth to cut it and which way he'd carry it back. He had come down for the leather. He had stayed for the map. That was when I stopped being only frightened. That was when I began, very quietly, to hope. The next day was the 3rd day, and the hunt was the 4th, and the whole house bent toward it like grass before a wind. The master was everywhere at once, too loud, too merry, ordering the horns cleaned and the dogs fed and the stirrup cup wine brought up from the deep cellar. The young lord was glad of it. He loved to ride, he said, more than anything. At home they never let him ride out hard. There was always some old uncle to say, be careful, and here at last in the free country he might gallop. I heard him say it to the guard, laughing in the corridor. And I heard the guard say, "We'll ride together, my lord." Close, you and I find I've a taste to see this country myself. You'll spoil my gallop, sergeant. I'll spoil nothing you'll miss, the guard said, and there was something under it, dry and warm, that made the young lord laugh again. He liked the guard. You could see he liked him. The way a younger man likes an older one who treats him as worth guarding without ever once treating him as a fool. That night I could not keep away from the gun-room door. I knew it was madness, but I had heard the river and the bridge and the girth, and I could not bear not to know what the soldier above me knew or did not know, and whether he could be in time. So I took the long way to the linen press, past the gun-room, and the door was shut this time and lamplight under it, and I stood in the dark and pressed my ear to the cold oak. The master was inside, and his brother Reginald and Lady Holloway, and a 4th voice, low and miserable, that I knew. The steward, Mr. Cobb. "Can't," Cobb was saying. "I can't, sir, I won't, the soldier knows." He came to my room. He came to my own room tonight, sir, and he sat down on my own chair and he asked me how long I'd served this house, and whether I'd a family, and what I thought a man owed a house that was about to do murder under his eye. He never said the word, sir. He never threatened me once. He only sat there asking it kindly and looking at me, and I can't. I've a wife in the village. I won't hang for your debts. You're in it to the neck already, you sniveling, the master began. No, said Reginald, soft and final, cutting him off. No, Garrick, Cobb is right in his way. The soldier is hunting us now. He went to the stable this afternoon and checked every girth on every saddle and then sat down by the harness room and mended his own stirrup leather there till dark, in the one chair from which a man can see the whole tack wall. He has made it impossible to touch the saddles. He is not a fool, and he is not far from his palace, Margaret. He carried his palace in with him. So, a pause, I heard a chair creak. We changed the door, no girth, no bridge, the boy will not even ride. How? Said Lady Holloway. The wine, Reginald said. The stirrup cup. They drink it all, the whole field, before they mount. It would be the rudest thing in the county to refuse it. One cup handed up to the boy by the master himself, with the master's own hand. Not the broth a soldier can forbid. Not a saddle a soldier can guard. A cup of welcome, pressed on him in front of 40 witnesses, that no guest on earth could refuse and no soldier could forbid without insulting the whole hunt. And in it, I heard the small chink of glass on glass. Enough that he is merely unwell by the second mile, dizzy, loose in the saddle. And the country here is cruel country, full of holes and falls, and accidents will happen to a sick rider on a hard hunt, far from the field, with only one tired soldier to find him too late. The welcome, I thought, with my heart turned to ice water, the welcome that hides a knife. And the soldier, the master said, he'll taste it. He tastes everything. He will not taste the stirrup cup, Reginald said. Because the stirrup cup is sacred, you fool. It is the oldest courtesy in the realm. The host's own wine handed to the guest at the mounting block. And a guard who knocks it from his prince's hand before 40 mounted gentlemen is a guard who has shamed his prince and called his hosts poisoners with no proof on God's earth, and will be sent home in disgrace by the boy himself. We do not need to get past the soldier. We need only put the soldier in a place where doing his duty looks exactly like an outrage. Let his own honor be the cage. A man like that will not break a sacred courtesy on a kitchen girl's whisper and a feeling in his gut. There was a silence then, in the gun room, the silence of people who have found the one door that the soldier cannot guard. And I stood in the dark corridor and I thought, he does not know. The note I wrote said the girth, the bridge, the hunt. He has guarded the saddles and the bridge. He has made them change the door, and the new door, the cup, the sacred cup he cannot strike down, is one I never warned him of, because 3 nights ago in the first gun-room talk there had been no cup. They had only thought of it tonight because of him. He had closed every door but the one they had only just found, and I was the only soul outside that room who knew it, and the hunt was at dawn. I did not go to the linen press. I went straight up the back stair, past the place where Mr. Cobb usually stood and did not stand tonight, all the way up to the south corridor, and I did the maddest thing of my whole life. I scratched at the guard's door, the little dressing-room door in the dark at past midnight, a kitchen girl in her shift with her boots in her hand. It opened before my nails had crossed it twice. He was dressed. Of course he was dressed. I think that man slept in the red if he slept at all. He stood in the gap of the door with a candle behind him and his face in shadow, and he did not say a word. He only looked at me and waited. The cup, I whispered, tomorrow. The stirrup cup at the mounting block. They've changed it to the cup because of you, sir. They said you've shut every other door. They said the cup is sacred and you can't strike it down without shaming him. That's the whole of it. That's why they chose it. The master hands it up with his own hand and it's in the wine, enough to make him dizzy by the second mile, so he falls in the bad country far from the field, and you can't refuse it for him without calling my hosts murderers in front of 40 gentlemen on the word of a feeling, the guard said, very low. Yes, I had wondered which door they'd find when I shut the others. He looked at me for a long moment, that weathered, patient face, and something in it was almost gentle. You heard all this just now. In the gun room. Yes, sir. The master and his brother and the lady. And the steward's afeard, sir, he wants out. He said you came to his room. He did, the guard said, and he's the crack in the wall. He was quiet a moment. Then, the stirrup cup, the master's own hand. Both of them drink it, the whole field. Yes, sir, no one refuses it, it would shame the house. The ghost of something crossed his face, not a smile, but the country it would be built on. No, he agreed softly. No one refuses it. And then, so quietly I barely heard, but there's more than one way to drink a cup. He looked at me again. Go to your bed, Hesper. He knew my name. I never learned how. You've done a brave thing 3 times over, and there's nothing left for you to do but be a kitchen girl in the morning, dull and sleepy and stupid, and stay well back from the mounting block. Whatever you see at the block tomorrow, whatever it looks like, you do nothing and you say nothing. Can you do that? The hardest thing of all. Yes, sir, I breathed. Good girl. Then we'll all of us see the sun come up the day after. And he closed the door, soft as a falling leaf, and I went up to the cold attic and lay shaking under the eaves, and somewhere below me in the dark house, a tired country soldier far from his palace sat up the rest of the night with one cracked steward and a feeling in his gut and a sacred cup he was forbidden to touch, and built, out of nothing, the one door of his own. The morning of the hunt came up cold and bright, with a white mist lying along the river and the pines black against a hard, pale sky. The whole county had ridden in 40 gentlemen and ladies in their hunting greens and blacks, the horses stamping and steaming on the gravel, the hounds in a brown river of bodies and noise, the horns flashing. I had never seen Thornfield so full or so loud, and I had never been so afraid in a crowd of laughing people in my life. I was at the mounting block with the other girls, carrying round the basket of little honey cakes that go with the stirrup cup, because that is a kitchen girl's place at a hunt, to be small and busy, and invisible at the edge of the grate, which was exactly where the guard had told me to be, dull and sleepy and stupid. I kept my eyes down and my hands moving and my heart up in my throat. The master was magnificent. I will give him that. You would never have known he was a frightened bankrupt who had gambled his house to the floorboards and meant to murder a king's nephew before noon. He stood at the mounting block in his green coat with the great silver hunting cup in his 2 hands, and he was all warmth and welcome, handing it up brimming to each rider as they mounted, the oldest courtesy in the realm, the host's wine pressed on every guest. Drink, drink, my friends, to a fine day and a fast field. And the wine went round, and the laughter went round, and one by one the gentlemen drank and handed the cup down again to be refilled, and no one refused it, because no one ever refuses it. His brother Reginald stood a little apart at the master's shoulder with that smooth, quiet smile, watching the cup go round, waiting for the one rider it had been poured for. The young lord came out last, the place of honor in borrowed hunting green, flushed and happy as a boy let out of school. He went up onto the mounting block to take the cup from the master's own hand before the whole field, and the guard came with him. In the full red, on a hunt morning among 40 gentlemen in green, the king's man, blazing like a coal, 1 step behind his prince's shoulder, exactly where he had been every hour for 4 days. The master lifted the great cup, freshly filled. I saw Reginald's hand twitch at his side as he poured it. I saw it. The small private wine slipped from a flask into the bottom of the cup before the good wine went on top, and he raised it high so all the field could see the honor of it. And he said in his big, warm, carrying voice, to his lordship, to the house of Renmore, drink, my lord, drink to Thornfield that loves you well. And 40 riders took it up, glad and roaring, drink, drink. And the young lord laughed and bent from the block to take the cup in both hands, and there was no soldier on earth who could strike that cup from a prince's hands in front of 40 cheering gentlemen and not be the one disgraced. And the guard did not try to. He did something else. He stepped up onto the block beside his prince, easy and unhurried, smiling. I had not known the man could smile, and it was a good smile, broad and frank and soldierly. And he put out his own hand and closed it warmly over the young lord's hand on the cup, and he said, in a voice pitched to carry to the whole laughing field, "My lord, let me. There's an old custom in the king's own household, older than this country wine, and I'd be shamed to ride out without it. The king's guard drinks first to the king's blood, the host's cup, the guard's first sip, and then it's yours and sweeter for the waiting. Will you grant me that, Sir Garrick? The guard's portion." and the whole field roared its approval, because it was a fine soldierly thing, and it sounded ancient and true, though I have lived a long life since, and I have never once heard of any such custom, and I do not believe it ever existed before that morning on that block. He made it up. He built the one door they had not shut, a courtesy older than their courtesy, a custom they could not refuse without insulting the king's own household in front of the whole county. They had built him a cage of honor. He had reached into it and built a deeper one around them. The master's face. I was close with my little basket and I saw it. The smile stayed on, but everything behind it fell down a long way and did not stop falling, because there was nothing he could say. To refuse the king's man the king's own custom, before 40 witnesses, would be to declare to the whole world that there was something in that cup a king's guard must not drink. And the brother, Reginald, went the color of tallow, and his smooth, quiet smile came off his face like a mask coming off, and for one moment I saw what was truly under it, and it was nothing at all, a clerk's panic, an emptiness. A man who had been so clever about the one tired soldier and had not once imagined the soldier would simply, smilingly, drink the poison meant for the boy. For of course the guard knew it would not kill. Enough to make a man dizzy by the second mile, Reginald had said. Not poison to drop a man at a mounting block in front of 40 witnesses. That would be no accident at all. It was meant to be slow and small and far away, which meant the guard could drink it standing still in the open in the sun, with every eye upon him, and survive it, and let the survival be his proof. Of course, the master said, because there was nothing else in the whole world he could say. Of course, the king's custom, the guard's portion, and his hand shook just slightly as the young lord, laughing, delighted, handed the great silver cup across to his soldier. The guard took it. He raised it to the field, to the master, to his pale prince. To Thornfield, he said, that loves you well, and his eyes over the rim were on the master's face, and they did not blink, and he drank, not a sip. He drank deep, half the cup down in the bright cold morning, slow and steady, while 40 gentlemen cheered a soldier's good thirst, and 2 murderers stood frozen at the block, and watched the whole shape of their salvation drain away down a tired country soldier's throat. Then he lowered the cup, and he did not stagger, and he did not fall, and he did not even falter, because that man could have walked a straight line off a cliff. He simply stood there in the red in the sun, full of their poison, looking at the master with those patient, unhurried eyes, and he said quietly now, just to the block, just to the master and the brother and the pale boy between them, a strong wine, Sir Garrick. Stronger than the fields, I think. Did you not pour it from a different flask? And the silence that came down then was not the field's silence. The field was still cheering, far off, beginning to move toward the gate. This was the small, terrible silence of 3 people on a mounting block, and a kitchen girl with a basket, who all at once understood the same thing. I'll sit my horse a while, the guard went on, gentle, conversational, and we'll see how a strong wine treats a man on a long ride. By the 2nd mile, do you think, Sir Garrick? Dizzy by the 2nd mile, loose in the saddle, far from the field, in the cruel country down by the bridge, where a sick rider might fall, and only one tired soldier find him, too late. He set the cup down on the block very softly between them. I've a feeling in my gut, Sir Garrick, he said. I've had it 4 days. I find this morning it's a fact. The master made a sound, not a word. The young lord had stopped laughing. He was looking from face to face, his happy flush draining, beginning, too slowly, the way the kind and unguarded always begin too slowly to understand. And then the guard turned from the block, unhurried, and lifted one red arm, and 3 men I had taken for grooms. 3 quiet men who had ridden in that morning among the 40 and stood all this while holding horses at the edge of the yard. Men I now know he had sent for 4 days ago, by the saddler, by the boot, by a folded word carried out with the leather to a fast rider on the Capitol Road. 3 quiet men set down the horses they were holding and walked in through the laughing crowd toward the mounting block, and they were not grooms at all. "The king's nephew," the guard said, still quiet, still gentle to the whitening master, "does not ride out today. And you, Sir Garrick, and your brother and your lady, are going to sit very still in your own gun room and explain to the king's justice how it is that the host's own cup was poured from a flask that no other rider drank. The steward will help you tell it. He came to me 3 nights ago. The first lie I ever heard him tell, Cobb had not come to him. He had gone to Cobb, and he told it to save the one cracked man who could be saved, and I have loved him for it all my life. He could not carry it. Not everyone in this house." And here, for the first and only time, his eyes found me across the basket of honey cakes, just for a breath. Not everyone in this house was willing to smile while murder was done. It was over very fast after that, the way the worst things and the best things are. The 3 quiet men took the master and the brother without a blow struck. There was nothing to strike. Reginald simply sat down on the mounting block and put his face in his hands, and the master wept, which was somehow the worst of all. Lady Holloway they found in the gray silk in the gun room where she had been waiting to grieve, and she did not weep at all, only looked at the wall. The young lord stood white and shaking and at last understanding everything, and the guard went to him and put one steadying red arm about his shoulders for a moment. The only time I ever saw him touch his prince, and said something low that I did not hear, and the boy nodded and stood straighter and was a man. And the guard had drunk half a cup of their poison in the cold bright morning, and held himself straight as a lance through all of it, through the arrest and the weeping and the boy and the rest. And only when the master was led away and the prince was safe inside and the danger was wholly past, only then did he sit down, slowly and carefully, on the edge of the mounting block in the sun, and rest his forearms on his knees and bow his head and let it take him at last. He was very ill for 2 days. The physician they sent for from the next county said another man, a smaller man, a man who had drunk it on a fearful empty stomach instead of standing 4 days fed on bread and apples and country water and resolve, might not have risen from it. He rose from it. On the 3rd day he was on his horse beside his prince on the Capitol Road, pale as paper and straight as a post, and the whole sorry house of Thornfield watched them go. I carried his stirrup cup to him that last morning myself, good clear water, and I had drawn it and held it every step from the well, and he knew that I had, and he drank it down and looked at me with those patient eyes. "You wrote a note in the dark with a bootboy's pencil," he said, "and you carried it past a man who'd have killed you for it, and you did the hardest thing in the world after, which is nothing at all when everything in you screams to act. There's grown soldiers I've served beside who couldn't have done the half of it." He handed me back the cup. "Don't stay a kitchen girl, Hesper. You see too much and too true for it." I did not stay a kitchen girl. But that is another story and a long one, and it is enough to say that I have eaten at better tables since than ever Thornfield set, and at every one of them, when the host lifts the welcome cup and presses it round with his big warm smile, I think of a tired country soldier far from his palace, who taught me young that the warmest welcome can hide a knife, and that the surest way to draw a knife is to take, with a smile of your own, the cup that hides it and drink it down, and stand there straight in the sun until the men who poured it understand that they have lost. He was the only one at Thornfield, that first night on the steps, who was not pretending, and he was the only one in the end who was not afraid.